Okay, we were in a big hurry. Why don't we get started?
In a very controversial subject this week on Square Off, President Reagan nominates conservative Justice William Reinquist to replace Chief Justice Warren Burger as the Chief Justice of our nation's highest court, the United States Supreme Court. Tonight on Square Off, we ask those of you at home and those of you here on the panel, do you support the nomination of William Reinquist as Chief Justice? Eddie Gutman.
Well, it would depend, Richard, on whether I believe that the explanations that he has given for the serious charges against him were true. If I believed his explanations, I would support him.
Madeline Murphy.
I wouldn't support him whether he said they were true or false because I think he's a good dissembler.
Boyce Mosley.
He's a scholar. He's a good administrator. Why not?
John Lofton.
Oh, I think so, Richard. Senator Kennedy, of course, says that Mr. Rehnquist's record on women's rights is too extreme, but of course Mr. Rehnquist never drove a woman off a bridge.
We will talk about the Rehnquist nomination and the Channel 13 Eyewitness News Pop Senatorial Quiz tonight as we square off. All right, good evening, everyone. It's Saturday night. It is 7:30. It's a beautiful weekend in Baltimore, but the Rehnquist nomination is a very hot subject. Moral Majority Leader Reverend Jerry Falwell calls Rehnquist's selection very wise, while spokespeople for the National Organization for Women say that his confirmation would put, as they say, the leading opponent against women's rights at the top of the bench. Eddie.
Well, we're talking about two different things now. I was saying that there were serious charges that had been leveled against him. I'm not talking about his philosophy on the bench. His philosophy is a different matter. Whether he believes in women's rights, whether he takes a view different from mine on the subjects that come before the court, that is not a basis for my voting against him if I were in the United States Senate. My sole reason for voting against him would be if I didn't believe that the explanations he gave were true. I mean, for example, here is a man who wants to be the Chief Justice, which would be the Chief Lawyer of the United States, who wants me to believe that a deed that was given to him, now he didn't read a deed or didn't know what was in a deed that was given to him. I find that difficult to believe.
All right,
I want to believe it. I want to believe it.
We're talking about the deed on his property. Wait a minute. Greensboro Bend, Vermont, which bars its sale to members of the Hebrew race or to Jewish people. Also, Rehnquist is alleged to have challenged black and Hispanic voters about their qualifications at polling places in Phoenix, Arizona in the early 60s.
Yes, but also in Phoenix, Arizona, he has a home that in an area where it excludes blacks. But that is not to the real issue of the point. When he was on the bench, he also counseled the Nixon administration during that time when there was a question about First Amendment rights. And they were trying to get the information today or yesterday from the Justice Department, and they stonewalled and said that it was executive privilege, and nobody could read what he had done in that very basic situation in the Constitution.
What do we want in a Supreme Court justice, particularly the Chief Justice? We want a man, first of all, who knows the law, who is a constitutional scholar. We want someone who is a good administrator, and Rehnquist meets these criteria.
Yeah, but there are other criteria.
A man's personal philosophy should have no bearing on whether he should be chosen.
No, but there is one criteria that you didn't mention. There are lots of great legal scholars. He is not the only one. He doesn't have a first lien on knowing the law.
He may not be the only one.
I understand, but there is a quality.
Nominated.
There is a quality that you overlooked, and that is integrity. And if
That's
there's any
right.
question about his integrity, I don't mean his philosophic views. I agree with you. But if there is some question about his integrity, Madeline raised the question of whether or not he was doing something while on the bench that was unethical.
Well, look,
if those things occurred, then you have to take a serious look at the man.
John,
Look,
come in
you,
here.
you got to do more than just raise questions. I mean, Madeline is a past master at raising questions. What she's not very good on is answering questions. The fact of the matter is that the American Bar Association, which I thought was supposed to impress you liberals, has given him the highest rating that they give.
Let him finish, Matt.
And you said he was a dissembler, which to me sounds like a mealy-mouthed way of saying he's a liar.
That's
now, what did
right.
he lie about?
Right.
What did he lie about?
Wait a minute.
Hold it.
We're not,
What is he dissembling
we're not
about?
talking about whether the American Bar Association says that he is qualified as
The
a
highest
jurist.
ranking they
The
gave him.
highest rank. He does have the highest ranking. He is he's an exceptionally bright man. What I am questioning, and what is now before the United States Senate, is whether he engaged in certain things over a lifetime during his career that do shed on his integrity and
Yes.
do make him
Well, like what?
disqualified.
All right,
Look at-
all right. You
Hold it,
said-
folks. Keep order here.
You
Now we've
said
got
don't
people
answer
want to
any
hear this.
questions. All right, let's take the issue of his publishing his memoirs and his book that deal with the same people that he's going to have to deal with over this period of time as he's receiving mealy-mouthed amounts so that it won't be reported he's receiving a whole lot of money from Morrow Publishing
Oh, no,
Company.
we don't know
now,
about-
he
we
had
don't-
a
we-
case.
we don't know about
he
that.
had a case.
We don't know about
He had
that.
a case of Harper in regard to copyright issues, and now he is going to have to judge on several
Yeah, but
cases
see,
dealing with the
wait a minute,
publishing
you're not-
firms.
you're not-
But he's
Hold it,
also taking money from a
Yeah.
publishing firm.
But
Hold
see,
it.
your idea of answering a question is to raise a new charge. Now, I ask you what you meant when you said originally
Hold it
that
over
he's a
here.
dissembler. Where has he behaved dishonestly or not told the truth or
in
equivocated?
regard to these 12 affidavits against him about the harassment.
He has denied it. He has said he didn't
yes,
do it.
but I
That's not
think he's a
dissembling.
liar.
On what basis do you think
I
he's a
think
liar?
that against the situation where you have these people with affidavits and coming before this Senate committee stating these facts, that he has harassed Hispanics, he has harassed blacks, that he has made them read the Constitution to find
Well,
out
that wasn't
if they
illegal.
Let
That
me
was
ask you-
legal.
let me ask you a
Wait
question.
a minute. One thing that's very important is that it was legal at the time he did it to go into a line and test the literacy of a person who was about to vote. That was legal. Harassment now is quite another matter, but I repeat that he categorically and flatly denies that he
I don't
harassed
believe
anybody.
him.
All right, hold it
Of course
over
you
here.
didn't
Eddie,
believe- you didn't
boys.
believe him before he answered.
Hold it over
I don't
here.
believe it.
That's
Fine.
right.
Please, go.
I just would like to know what John's reaction would be if there was something about the man, if he had executed a deed or accepted a deed which was contrary, which had in it something which offended you personally.
Sure.
I mean, you
That's a
just
fair
want
question.
to
Well, that's a fair
overlook that.
question.
You know,
That's a
I'll
fair
just tell you this. I want to tell you this.
Have
I
you read
never-
all the deed? Have you read all the deed on your house?
Listen.
Have you?
Have I? Yes.
You've read
I
every single word of it,
absolutely
huh?
have read every single word in the deed. And I'm not going to be Chief Justice of the United States.
Oh,
when you
Eddie,
become Chief Justice of the
Eddie,
United States,
come on,
it seems
Eddie.
hard for me to believe that the Chief Justice of the United States can say to the public, the American public, that he did not read a deed for a home that
I
he
think
owned.
the overwhelming majority of the
I think-
people don't read the deed
Don't
in their
you
house.
think-
He may not have read it. He may
Don't-
not have read it.
Well, he claims he
The
did.
issue is whether or not he's anti-black or anti-Jewish,
Exactly,
not whether or not he bought a
And
house.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
One at a time.
There's no
please.
evidence of
If,
that.
if I thought he was anti-black or anti-Jewish, I would definitely take the position that I couldn't support him. I'm not saying he is any of those
This
things.
is nothing
I am
more-
saying that these questions have been raised, and it is
This does
fair
not
for the
cut him
American
out.
public to get answers.
Well, of course they're raising it.
But
This is
this-
the liberals' last stand.
John,
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point, John.
That's the point.
Hold it
the-
one at a time. Boys.
The liberals have a very flimsy argument in trying to see that he's not confirmed. The man should be confirmed because the man knows his business. The man is a good administrator, and these are nothing more than allegations. And we cannot deny a man a seat because he has a particular
Well,
but that's-
if
political
there are
leaning.
allegations in regard to his,
Oh,
his
the
thwarting
FBI
the
FBI
wait a minute,
Hold it,
wait,
boys.
wait,
The FBI
wait, wait,
cleared
wait.
him.
In thwarting the First Amendment rights, in helping the Attorney General decide how he was going to deal with the Watergate issues of wiretapping, with the Watergate issues of bugging phones, with Watergate issues of freedom of speech, and dealing with demonstrators in the Watergate era with Nixon at the head, trying to stonewall everything that was against him. Then this is the charge is that he is not a credible person on the Supreme
Before
Court.
Well,
we
that's
break,
the- that's
do
the
any of
que-
you feel he will not be nominated?
No,
No.
He'll be nominated.
We'll be back in a
He'll be
moment.
confirmed. He'll be confirmed.
He's confirmed.
proceeding for buses.
Well, he can't.
All right, we are talking about the Senate pop quiz. By the way, at the end, we meant Reinquist will in fact be confirmed not nominated. Everyone here thinks that he will be. We'll know that in a while. Let's get now to the Channel 13 Eyewitness News poll given to the senatorial candidates, those who are running for Mac Mathias' seat in the U.S. Senate. Eyewitness News asked the candidates a particular series of questions. Not many did very well on it, in fact, and it created an awful lot of controversy. It was written up on the morning paper, the front page of the Washington Post. The reporter that did the quiz, Don Williams, appeared on the CBS Morning News to talk about it, and it's created an awful lot of conversation.
Well,
and you're home and here too.
What do you expect our politicians to be intelligent?
No, but
Well, that's not
it was
necessarily.
it was very entertaining, and everyone got a big charge out of it. But I think it is what is called a cheap shot.
No, it
because
Let Eddie
I am
finish.
not saying what you think. I'm saying what I think, and let me explain why.
Thank you, Eddie.
Because I mean, I am not all that interested in whether the candidate who I'm going to vote for knows the name of the Prime Minister of Israel. I am interested in knowing whether the candidate I'm going to vote for knows anything about the problems there and can deal with them and understands them and has some views on them. Now, when you throw questions like that at people cold, it's normal to draw a blank on those things. I don't think it means a damn thing. You can ask us questions and we will.
Eddie,
But you know, the campaigning is a whole lot of fluff. You know that, and I know that because I have run several times. And if you can go around talking about general things and general statements and appeal to what the people think are their problems, then you lose sight of all these other things while you're campaigning because you've got these 3 set speeches you're making all the time.
You know, that quiz indicates that oftentimes those people running for political office aren't as astute on issues or on information they should be. I should think that we would want our candidates, particularly for the Senate, to know something about current events.
Well, I'm not
I'm not saying that they don't, but this is an indication that perhaps they're a little shaky in this area.
Yeah, but that's what they got AIDS for.
Well,
to look it up.
asking people names of officials in other countries doesn't test whether they know anything about current events. Asking them about the events. What about the politics in that country, and what about this country's reaction to
Eddie,
them? And what about how would you
Eddie,
deal with that?
would-
Those are the issues, not the names of people.
But no, I would think, Eddie, that before one could develop a position, one should have a reservoir of facts, and you become rather suspect if you're asked certain questions, factual questions, and you can't answer those factual questions.
Well, but you know, it's interesting. You object to them having these questions thrown at them cold. But you know, in real life, you get a lot of problems thrown at you cold, Eddie. You don't have time. You have to think on your feet. And I think it's been unfortunate that all too often we've found out that many of our elected officials are idiots after we elected them. So I think this was a very good idea,
I
and that
agree.
most interviewers are far too easy on the people they're
I
interviewing.
agree.
Now, the Washington Post put this on the front page of the paper. I personally don't think it's front page news that Mike Barnes is kind of stupid. I think that's sort of a dog bites man kind
It's
of
not
story.
fair that you point to one of the candidates because many did not do well.
Well, Mike Barnes
Well,
is one of the worst,
may
and
I
I
su-
think the miracle is that Mike Barnes got any of the questions right.
May I suggest perhaps that all candidates running for office should be given a competency test,
Oh, they
like
should.
teachers
I'm
should.
You're in
yours.
test. I mean, you're in test too.
I agree.
Hold it. Order down.
You're an educator. I mean, you more than anyone should know that testing people on facts such as names and dates doesn't necessarily show any intellectual ability. I can memorize dates from now till tomorrow. It doesn't show that I'm intelligent.
Well,
it shows
that's
I
not
have
very
that
long.
ability.
That's not very long,
That's
right?
true. Well, that's as many dates as I can remember. But if you were going to quiz a person on something philosophical, what
come
they
on.
know, facts. Okay, facts. We're facts. Names and places and dates
Eddie,
are not facts.
If we would pull a map of the world down and ask many of those candidates to go up and identify certain countries, I bet many of them couldn't do that.
And,
I would
well,
expect
that's
them.
right.
They should
And
be able to.
well,
would be-
as a group of people in this country, we are ignorant on history and geography to the extent that it is preposterous. Now, I think the people who are dealing with arms control, who are dealing with all kinds of diplomatic as well as domestic problems, ought to be able to answer questions that are rather simple questions in regard to
Of
international.
course.
And I agree with you. We ought to have a competency.
Well, I'd like
test.
to know, Madeline. I mean, you repeatedly on this show have defended the public school system. If it's as great as you've argued, how come we have all these people that you just said are ignorant on history and geography?
But that's a
how could that
general
possibly-
trend
They're
in
not-
the
they're not
whole
graduate
Oh, it is
schools.
not the whole
It is in
United
the
States.
United
I beg your
States.
pardon.
Hold it.
Private school students
Oh,
do
you-
much better in history and
Well, you know
geography.
what
Wait, wait, let
I'm
Madeline
talking,
finish.
but you're talking about
Barnes
public
went to a
schools.
private
Just a
So
moment.
therefore,
They're cranking out the idiots,
If
that's
you're
why.
asking about public schools, I answer on the basis of public schools, not private schools, which you're talking about. And I believe that we as a nation have had the problem ever since before Sputnik in regard to our understanding of history and our understanding
That's
of
not true at all.
geography.
We
You know
used to be a
what, I
much
have
more
another-
literate
I have
country
another
than we are
question.
now.
Oh,
All
I
right,
don't
one more
see
minute.
it.
I want to ask you about another issue. Hurry up.
I have a question.
You don't
The
know your
question in my
history.
mind
Hi,
is-
John.
Yeah, we'll
question
save
in my
it.
mind is, what were the producers thinking? What was their motivation when they dreamed up this little scheme? Were they doing this expecting that the candidates would not be able to answer
I
these
don't think
questions
so.
and embarrass them? I think they were.
I don't.
Because there is no let's think it through carefully. If they thought they would ask the questions and everyone would know the answers, they would have proved nothing. I suspect that when the producers were discussing this show, they said, let us do this, and in the back of their minds, they were planning to embarrass
I think the
people.
producers did
I
us
don't
a
think
great
that actually
service.
happened.
I-
The
I-
conversations
Great
I
service.
overheard in the newsroom, and but
No.
I'm not
I
to speak
question
about that.
motivation. To
All
me,
right.
it proved nothing and embarrassed some people, that's for sure.
Would you repeal the amendment that would allow the President of the United States to serve as long as he or she would serve at the discretion of the voters?
No, no,
Yes,
not
yes.
in a representative democracy, not in a representative government. I believe that everybody has to have an opportunity to serve in the highest
That's exactly
land,
why it should
part
be
of the
repealed,
land.
because we
Yes.
live in a democratic and representative society. Let the people decide who is going to be president.
But I wouldn't repeal. I wouldn't sponsor
I'm wondering, Madeline,
repeal of
if the
that.
president was a Democrat as popular as Mr. Reagan is as a Republican, would you take the same position?
No, because you see, I don't believe there's that much difference between the Democratic and Republican Party.
Just a different animal. The president has already said, of course, that if the 22nd Amendment were repealed, it wouldn't apply to him. But look what happens. You know, on the day after the election in 1984, the next day, the newspapers were filled with stories that Reagan is now lame duck, and you can't accomplish as much when you're lame duck
Well,
because you're
there-
not taking it
was-
seriously.
There was the
that is a
proposal
problem.
to have the president have one term of 6 years, so we don't have to worry about any of that.
Well, that begs the question. The question is, should the people in this country have the right to choose their president, and a president who
Well,
they think is
Nixon.
exceedingly good, not popular, but exceedingly
Well,
good
what
and
would you do in
popular.
the
good and
case of
popular,
person?
should have the
popular.
option.
What would you do in the case of Nixon? Or
Well, what I
people
do
of that
he's
ilk?
history. He's history. The same would apply to Nixon.
There are
Nixon-
safeguards against people like Nixon or
mean,
someone.
yeah,
like
I don't know
If
why
it's
you
repealed,
single
then Nixon could
why
be
do you single
reelected.
Nixon
Hold
out? That's right.
That's something
John.
to look forward to, isn't it?
Don't say
well,
that.
I'm for the repeal, but not soon because I'm sick of Reagan.
Well, he
I
said
can't
he
believe.
wouldn't
Wait a
do
minute.
it.
Stop. I
know.
can't
Yeah,
believe
we've
you
talked
said
about
that.
this before.
You have been,
He's been a
the
flop.
Reagan
Reagan's been a-
supporter
I
on
know.
this show.
No, not in a long, long
Not in a
time.
while.
Not for the past 3
Why
years.
are you? Hold on. Why are you sick of Reagan?
Because I don't think he's delivered on any major campaign promise he made. I don't think our taxes have really been cut. Federal spending is still out of control. And if you look at the figures and compare them to Carter's last budget in office, Reagan's defense budget has not been larger than Carter's
So he's
last
let
budget.
you down.
Well, he's let a lot of people
He's let
down.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
down.
He's let a lot of
And the
people down.
question is, how are we going to get?
He's very
back?
popular, though. He's very popular, but unfortunately, his being popular doesn't solve problems.
Well, I think
gets
he's
him elected.
popular.
Yeah.
You know
Gets
why
him
I think
elected.
he's
Hold on.
popular? I think he's popular because we need royalty in this land. We
Why do
yearn
people say
for
that? We fought a war
royalty.
to
Oh,
overthrow
oh,
I
royalty.
think so. The way we build up the weddings and all of the
not
British and
royal.
everything. But he's royal in the sense that he was a movie star. And where is our royalty in this country? The movies.
Oh, that isn't
Hold
why
on.
Mr.
Go
Reagan.
ahead.
Maybe you've heard the phrase "the royal shaft." Maybe
Well,
that's,
he
That
talks.
isn't why Mr.
Hold
Reagan
it.
is popular. Mr. Reagan has been able to articulate the wishes of the people. He's been able to identify with the people, and that's why he's popular.
And he
Whether
has,
it's
Pleasant-
or not.
he has tapped an
pleasantly.
emotion. He has tapped an emotion in the American public that hasn't been tapped in a long time, and that is that feeling of patriotism, that feeling that it's good to be an American, and you must give Reagan the credit for that.
Well, I
As
don't
John points
give
out,
Reagan
he
credit for that.
hasn't produced on anything that he promised.
No, he's a very
at the time of the
congenial
election.
Well, how do you not
Right.
produce and become the most
Very
popular
pleasant.
president in history?
Because he says that we're a wonderful country, and we all agree.
And
with
he's
it.
Well,
still loving.
because he's a very nice, likable person.
Right.
Because unfortunately, we're a nation of tens of millions of people who do not pay close attention to the political issues, and they're just happy with some guy that makes them feel good.
Well, I wonder if he knows the name
like
of the
we
Prime
like
Minister.
decent people, and Reagan
He's a great
projects
father
the
and grandfather
decency.
He's a
figure.
good national master of ceremony.
I wonder if he knows the name of the Prime Minister of Israel.
We'll be back to dip into our People Are Talking
Mike
mailbag
Barnes?
that is overflowing with your letters after this.
These questions? Oh, no.
No, they weren't difficult.
The
Did you
only
read the
thi-
paper?
All right, people are talking about Square Off, and here's our first letter in response to the heated debate last week about South Africa. Garland Crosby of Baltimore writes, I'm surprised by the shockwave that Georgia Gosley sent through the spines of Elaine and Peter regarding her position on South Africa. They were obviously shocked to learn that all blacks are not docile and submissive. Did they expect black Americans to be less militant than their white counterparts?
Yes.
Here is, quiet down, a letter from Eric Allen of Owings Mills responds to the same subject by saying, it is amazing how the same people who criticize Reagan's expensive military budget are the same people who want him to rush in and invade South Africa. My, how people change. Bernard Kaplan of Pikesville defends Georgia Gosley by saying, what Jew did not feel the same about his brothers being treated like animals in the ovens of the Nazis? What American Indian brave didn't call down curses on the settlers who slaughtered them and raped their women? And Nellie Springfield of Edgewood, Maryland says, I completely fail to see the logic that goes along with the utter stupidity of Ms. Gosley's statement that killing white South Africans is the answer to their tragic problems. Other letters in thank you to Harry Zemmel of Baltimore, Henry Goldstick of Baltimore, Noah Duvall of Goochland, Virginia, Earl Fox of Hampstead, Maryland, Sandy Husfeld of Georgetown, and here is our address. Write us about the panelists or subjects discussed. Write to Square Off, WJZ-TV, Television Hill, Baltimore, Maryland, 21211. Now, next Saturday at this time, a very special Square Off as we talk about the women's movement. Has it gone a long way or has it gone the wrong way? Our panelists will be Elaine Stein, Tony Keene, Dr. Edgar Berman, and Madeline Murphy. Coming up next Saturday night, 7:30 on Channel 13 Square Off. Join us. Have a good weekend.